Hello, how are you doing? And welcome back to the channel. Are Welsh players going to go on strike before their game against England in the Six Nations? Massive story at the moment. I briefly mentioned it on the video I posted yesterday, but this video is focusing on that issue. In particular, there's a brilliant piece in the Times today by Sam Warburton, the former Wales and British and Irish Lions captain, where he kind of explains the issue from his point of view. I would encourage you all to go and have a look at that, because it is quite eye-opening. But I'm going to go through it in this video, why the players might go on strike, what's currently happening, why I think, to me, it doesn't necessarily make sense as an option for them to actually do, and also the awkward reality in rugby more generally, particularly being highlighted in Wales at the moment, that have the players just been getting paid too much. So I'm going to cover a range of things in this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, like the video and drop a comment down below. Big issue in the Welsh game. Let me know your opinions on it. All right, let's get into it. So just to reiterate, Sam Warburton's article in the Times was really good on this today. So I would encourage you to search that out if you're able to. But I guess first of all, why? Why might the players at this moment in time go on strike? And it's basically because there's yet to be an agreement between the WRU, the Welsh Rugby Union, and the regions and the players for what the budgets will be for next season. I've seen it reported that it's all agreed verbally, but it hasn't necessarily been signed yet. So this is basically the budget for players' contracts. And because this hasn't been agreed, there's a huge amount of uncertainty for the players at the moment, particularly those that are out of contracts. And again, I think I saw it on BBC Sport or BBC Wales reporting that that's about 70 players that have a huge amount of anxiety, uncertainty about where they'll be playing next year. And that obviously impacts their mental health, mortgages to pay, kids to send to school, all that sort of stuff is going on in the background. So that's what they are trying to agree at this moment in time. And why there's this disagreement is basically because the budgets are being reduced. So from what I've seen, the top earning players, which at the moment is around £400,000, could be reduced to about £280,000, which is a significant drop off. Obviously, it's still good money for the age they are, but you know, players deserve to get paid what they are worth in terms of the context of the game. But those that are really going to be impacted is probably the lower to middle income players, the guys that are on 50 grand a week or 100 grand or whatever that may be. And also the other element to mention with this is that 80% of those salaries roughly would be guaranteed, with the rest being down to various incentives or targets being met. And if the regions, and the Welsh regions, let's be honest, are in a pretty dire situation at the moment, their performances, despite the Ospreys doing really well this year in the Champions Cup, the performances have been on a downward trajectory over the last decade or so. Are those players going to be able to hit those targets and get the other 10, 20% of their salary, whatever it might be? So that's kind of a summary of where things are at the moment. It revolves around the budgets and how much the players might get paid, and the WRU basically saying there isn't the money there for us to continue to be paying the players at these levels. So the budgets are being reduced and it's the players that are having to bear the brunt of that. So from that point of view, you can understand why the players would want to go on strike. It's an incredibly difficult situation for them. As I mentioned already, if you are a player who's out of contract, you don't know where you're going to be playing or living next year, you don't know how much money that's going to be on, whether you're going to have to reduce a salary, that has a knock-on effect for mortgage payments and so many other areas of players' lives. It must cause a lot of anxiety. There's been a lot of stuff in the media over the last day or so about players really struggling with this whole situation. It perhaps even goes some way to explain some of the Welsh performances in the opening 2 rounds of the Six Nations as well. If this is bubbling away in the background, that's quite a significant thing to be contending with, because the point of view would be, well, why am I putting my body on the line when I don't even know if I'm going to have a contract in 6 months' time or for next season or where I'm going to be playing? So it causes a huge amount of issues, and therefore the strike makes sense. The reason that I'm not necessarily sure, and perhaps someone could explain this to me better, I'm not convinced that a strike makes sense. So the WRU makes about £10 million from Wales, England, in Cardiff, in the Six Nations, a huge amount of money. But given that it's the WRU having to agree these budgets and they're already saying that they're in dire financial situation, losing that income is only going to make that situation worse, surely. So I understand it from the player's perspective of it's a great thing to be able to threaten of we could strike, you're going to lose this money. But if they do strike, are they not, and I used this expression yesterday, are they not cutting off their nose to spite their face? Is it actually going to help the players in the long run? It's just going to weaken the financial situation of rugby in Wales as a whole. And therefore this budget, the desire to decrease it, is going to be exacerbated. That's what I don't quite understand at the moment, really. As I say, I think it's a good threat to hopefully get this signed and get it changed. But in reality, what does it actually do? And this kind of brings me on to my final point, which I've jotted down here as the ugly reality. And it's what's rearing its head in Wales at the moment. It's what has been bubbling along in the English Premiership as well, with the salary cap being reduced through COVID for the last few years. That may well be increased again, by the way. That's a story to keep an eye on in the years to come, because it's most likely going to go up again. But rugby has been reliant, and it depends on the model, whether it's union funded or private owners and things like that. But particularly if you look at the Gallagher Premiership, it's basically reliant on wealthy individuals being willing to fund the club, because the clubs don't make money. I think Newcastle Falcons, to be fair, did most recently. Exeter did in the past before COVID came in. But rugby isn't a sport that has made money. And a big part of that has been because of how much the players are getting paid. And on the one hand, what the players go through, I think they should rinse every single cent they can out of the game. I don't blame the players one bit for taking the money that's on offer, obviously, because what their bodies have to be put through, the injuries they sustain, the danger to them as well, they deserve to get paid as much as they can get offered, which is why I would never begrudge players moving overseas, moving to France or Japan, wherever it may be, and taking those really lucrative contracts. But what it does mean, when you look at it in the case of the WRU, is the players have been getting paid too much. And at some point, those salaries have to be reduced if you don't have the finances there to be able to support what they've been getting paid. And I think this is the awkward thing for the game as a whole. England, and domestically in England, we will continue to see it. I think that's what we're seeing in Wales at the moment. And it's a really tough conversation to have, because as I say, what the players go through and all that sort of stuff. And it's not like, okay, all right, the really top earners of the game, if they're injury free and have, you know, a 5, 6, 7 year peak where they're earning top money, can probably, particularly with international fees thought of as well in that, could probably earn enough and save enough that they can be comfortable, and then they can pick up corporate gigs and so on and so forth after retirement to keep them ticking along. But the vast majority of players aren't earning enough money to be able to put up their feet and swan off into the sun at the end of their career. But are players being paid too much? It's something that I know a lot of other people who know a lot more about it than me have spoken about over the years. Mark Evans being one of those, the man who's currently the, I think, director of rugby or something. I can't remember his exact title, of the Fijian Drua. He's been at Harlequins before. I know he's spoken about this a lot, that rugby has paid players too much. So because of that, I don't know what the solution is here for players in Wales. I think maybe the WRU is ultimately, despite all its failings, trying to do the right thing, because we need clubs that at least break even, that at least aren't racking up huge losses. And if that means there's a player drain in Wales, then maybe that's just a consequence of that. What's more important, having the regions healthy financially, or keeping the players in Wales? And maybe it is time that Wales completely rip up their selection policy. They allow their best players to move overseas and earn the big money. And then hopefully that leads to more younger Welsh players coming through in that system before moving overseas themselves. I wonder whether that is something that actually could be a benefit here, because we've seen Will Rowlands. It looks like he is moving to France to take the big paycheck, and good on him. But the 60 cap rule in Wales, I don't think it works anymore. I think there's only certain countries that can continue to enforce these sorts of rules about eligibility and selection policy. I think maybe Wales get rid of the 60 cap rule, try and bring through financial policies so the regions aren't just hemorrhaging money. That means the top players will move overseas because that's where the bigger contracts are, probably France and Japan at this moment in time. England a little bit as well, but even the salary cap in England, there's massive issues for the clubs there in terms of recruitment. So I think that's the problem here. I completely understand the desire for the players to go on strike. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. I think this is a really tough period for them. I sympathise with them. But at the same time, what's the future? For the regions to continue to be unsustainable? I don't think it is. So maybe that would be my solution. Try and run the regions sustainably. Maybe that will lead to the best players going overseas. You'll lose your best players, but maybe it makes more opportunity for younger players coming through. I honestly don't know, but I do think it's a nuanced conversation. Let's wait and see what happens. I don't think a strike will happen before the England game, but you never know. All right, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.